This has turned out nothing like I had imagined. It wasn't like when we met, we had ambitions to start a brand. We got along really well. We had a passion for furniture. I don't think either of us went into UTS to be like, we want to be furniture designers.
DesignByThem is a Sydney-based company formed in 2007 and led by industrial designers Sarah Gibson and Nicholas Karlovasitis. Created with collaboration at its heart, DesignByThem is dedicated to creating and producing unique products that promote the work of Australian designers, bringing them to an international market. The brand's growing curated collection of furniture, accessories and lighting is characterised by this unique Australian perspective, timeless aesthetic and distinct playfulness. Both Sarah and Nick continue to inspire through their products, talks and events, hoping to educate the general public and wider design community about the importance of product design.
Designers helped us also be better business people.
It's like basically problem solving, just with a different medium, I would say. Like, we are geeks for systems. We love an Excel just as much as we love getting a prototype back.
So you mentioned that the Australian market's quite small. What do you look for in terms of those collaborations?
I think a lot of designers are actually quite conservative. There's a bit of a waiting to be discovered or waiting to be approached kind of attitude. Your chances of that happening are quite low. I always say just reach out. You've got nothing to lose.
Sarah, Nick, thank you so much for joining me.
Pleasure.
Why design? What is it about this career that captivates you, that keeps you coming back for more?
That is a good question. I think I initially got into design because I was fascinated by industrial design. I remember I wanted to do it since I was in year 7. I don't know what the age that was because it was so long ago, but I remember reading an article about the industrial design movement and how it was there to, it came out of wanting to make these expensive objects that were part of the craft movement available to more people. And it was something that really captivated me, was this idea of a career that was around making things more accessible to more people, and beautiful things, not just the necessities. And so that was the initial calling for me. What keeps me coming back there?
How about now?
What keeps me coming back now? I mean, with what we do now, I think being able to reinterpret or reinterpret objects or recreate things is always really fascinating. It's a real privilege to be able to do something like that instead of this kind of structured kind of job. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's been that, and the way it constantly changes.
If you create a product that really resonates with people, they intuitively like, and it's really hard, and you never know. Some products land and some products don't, but it's like that like problem solving aspect that you're always aiming for, and the satisfaction comes through the success of the products. And it's not just for Nick and I, but the team that we have and the designers that we work with, that shared success, I think, is ultimately what drives us. Do you think?
No. Yeah, I mean, there's many.
There's many things, but that's the first thing.
We're in too deep.
Yeah, wow. We've got...
Yeah, you can't come out now.
It's the money. No.
No designers said that.
You mentioned, Nick, you mentioned your sort of year 7 start. What are those sort of early memories like? Was there, I mean, you know, I'm an architect and we always talk about playing with Lego and, you know, things like that. What's the, and I suppose as a sort of industrial designer, product designer, furniture designer, those relationships with drawing, relationships with making things, how does that relate, and how does that start you on your course?
My parents always said to me, I was always fascinated with the way things worked. So I was constantly getting a toy, disassembling it, and then reassembling it. It was this weird thing that I would do as a child. I think it's like understanding the way sometimes the world works in a way from a designer's perspective is always a key. I think designers like to understand how things work or would like to influence the way things work. And I think we're all kind of idealists in many ways, because we're always seeking to improve things. The status quo isn't really something that works with design as much. And so maybe there was that aspect of it, but definitely the Lego, the pulling things apart, seeing how things work was definitely something that I remember being a big part of my childhood.
And Sarah, did you find the same similar?
Yeah, I came into it actually more from the architecture perspective. I was always drawing. I would still to this day love a floor plan. Like, can do a floor plan for hours, and I'm not an architect, but I just love the thought process of making things function and fit. So I always wanted to do architecture, and then I came to industrial design. So I kind of came at it from the other perspective. And then that's our customer base now, which is so it's kind of related, but I initially was blown away by houses and mid-century design and probably some of the furniture that came with it, but it wasn't kind of front of mind until later on.
So you both qualified from the University of Technology in Sydney, and you've both continued your roles there. Keeping a toe in the education side. I mean, that's obviously a really important thing to you and what you do. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Part of why we started Design by Them was it was to kind of create recognition and understanding about Australian design. Um, and there's definitely an education undertone there of hopefully creating a bit of insight into what Australian design is. I mean, we're still grappling with what that is, so that's an ongoing thing. But yeah, I guess education is a big part of our brand, and we do talks and things like that because I think, especially in Australia, industrial design in itself is something that when you talk about it with your friends, it's not something they really understand. They know architecture, graphic design, interior design, but industrial design, you always have to correct yourself and say, oh, it's kind of like product design. And they're like, oh, cool. But no one can list like a product that they like or, so I guess we always feel like there's a lot you can do on that front. And, we still have ties with UTS and a lot of students actually that have graduated and now we work with still in our collection. Some of our teachers have designed for our collection, and I guess the industrial design world in Sydney is quite small or in Australia. So there's constant collaborations that we're doing through the business as well.
In terms of, obviously, you mentioned Design by Them, which is your studio, your company. How did that come about? Because you founded it quite early on in your career, straight out of university. And obviously, in terms of what you do, it is probably a little bit different than a lot of industrial designers do, because you're not only focusing on your own work, you're highlighting and sort of producing other people's work.
Sarah and I met at UTS, and it wasn't like when we met we had ambitions to start a brand necessarily. I think we got along really well. We had a passion for furniture. I wouldn't say that I don't know. I don't think either of us went into UTS to be like, we want to be furniture designers. But it was a passion that we both really grew into. It's also one of the more expressive forms of industrial design. As opposed to say a handheld device or a lawnmower and things like that. As we kind of got closer and closer to graduation and finishing, we started to look around and we noticed that really all the designers that were based in Australia were looking at overseas brands, and Australian design wasn't really that well represented here. And as a student, you start to look around and go, well, you're an idealist. Where would I work? Where would I feel inspired to work? And there just wasn't really much there. And so we thought it's kind of crazy that, there's all this talent, and it's all they seem to want to do is either go out individually and try and make it, and which is in itself a really huge undertaking, or try and
work with an overseas company.
Yeah, work with an overseas company. And so there was a gap there in the market, which we thought we could, being the young, naive, designers that we were, thought, this is an opportunity. And in many ways, it was good that we did it quite young, because being young means that you're, I think, more naive, but also open to risk taking and ambitious. There was a real ambition there, and so it was good, and we built it up slowly as well, which also helped because we didn't make, you can make mistakes when you're smaller. and you can learn from them. And you don't want to be doing that when you're much larger. So it really was, something we built up over time. And then, the idea is that it's not necessarily about Sarah and myself as designers, but really as a collective and representing what we consider some of the best Australian design, best of Australian design and the designers, and under one kind of umbrella, which is curated but still eclectic and ambitious, and not just driven by a really basic brand identity. So getting the balance right is always difficult, and I think Sarah and I often act a lot more as a curator, and helping kind of create the briefs and inform the designers we work with. But we're fortunate because Australian design doesn't have as much legacy. We can have a much wider range of expression within the collection.
Yeah, I think we sometimes even forget what projects what as well, because each project takes so much effort to get off the ground from the manufacturing perspective. Like sometimes I don't think we sometimes in the design pipeline even think about what's something Nick and I have designed and what another designer has designed, because it's like we all just want a good outcome for the product and it doesn't really matter. I think there's something more rewarding creating a brand that supports not just us as designers, but everyone else. It kind of makes it more rewarding, I think. Like definitely the best invoices we pay are those royalties to other designers. I'd love to pay that instead of the logistics bills. But like I think the thing that makes our job maybe even more rewarding is the collaborative aspect. And I think we realized that from the start, that in order to do something more meaningful, it can't just be about us. And I think now it's so blurred that all projects are, just as exciting. Like we get so involved in, and there's so many aspects that happen after the design phase that inform the design as well. So yeah, sometimes I really forget what's what.
Yeah, and if we contribute as well, I think we're not the type who are going to hold back and say, well, this is what we're given. I think we always want to improve the design and work with the designer, and get a good outcome for them and for us.
And presumably you're leaning into so many different skills. I mean, we can probably put it under the umbrella term of design, but the logistics side, the manufacture, the whole business side of things, and presumably these are things that maybe aren't necessarily considered in that initial design phase quite as much, but you as curators and manufacturers and sales people sort of thing, there's so much more to this side of things that you're kind of leaning into.
Yeah, and I think that's what helps make the product, that's what helps increase the chances of the product being successful. It's not just the design. I mean, design is a big part of it, but there's all these other considerations and factors that really come into play. And I think that's been part of our success is as designers, we've really gotten to understand that by running a business and the business part of it. And it's like, how do we approach some of those things in the design earlier on?
Sometimes you know too much though, and you're probably better to not understand the logistics when you're designing a product.
Yeah.
You can overthink it sometimes.
Which is why it's always refreshing when, say, a designer comes in and they might pitch something and it's quite a challenging idea. And it's great. It's exciting. And we're always energized by that as well. And it goes both ways as well, though. And that's what I think people often talk to me about is, Sarah and I, in terms of our time spent on design. But, we also do a lot of designing in the business. And it was great because we were very naive in terms of running a business or starting a business. And we had to apply some of these kind of problem solving techniques. And the way we saw business was through the lens of designers. Much to the dismay of a lot of our business coaches. I mean, some of the conversations we've had have been pretty funny where they're like, what's really important? And we're like, oh, the aesthetic, we were, and they're like, "Oh, what about cash flow?" And we're like, "Oh yeah, that thing."
Not
Um,
doing for the cash.
yeah. But it's been good. It's designers helped us also be better business people as well, I think.
We actually enjoy the business side though. Um,
There's a lot of problem solving in that.
it's like basically problem
Mm.
solving, just with a different medium, I would say.
Mm.
Like we are geeks for systems. We love an Excel just as much as we love getting a prototype back. So I think that makes for quite an interesting day, I would say.
No, I think that's a great response because obviously the university probably doesn't teach us at all about the sort of even probably touches on the business side of things, but like you say, those sort of transferable skills, thinking about it in a design mindset, because from my experience as an architect, we always have this old adage of we don't get taught marketing or business, all these different things in university, and all us architects are sort of frustrated at having to do all the business side of it. But like you say, it's just a kind of design challenge in itself, a problem solving thing.
Yeah, I mean, most of our staff are designers actually in all areas of operations and sales and brand. Of course, there's more alignment there generally with design, but actually, I think most of our team have a design background.
Yeah, a lot of them do.
And it's just a kind of mindset of problem solving and a bit of curiosity, I would say, as well, to kind of solve the problems as well, I think.
So you mentioned working with students and staff and ex ex tutors. How do you find your designers generally? And obviously, you mentioned that the Australian market's quite small. What do you look for in terms of those collaborations? How do they sort of happen? What are the sort of mechanics behind it?
It's really varied, I have to say. And it's changed a bit as well as the brand has grown and matured as well. I think, I mean, if Sarah and I, one of our favorite things was to, see a prototype or a designer doing a exhibition and looking at something and being like, wow, that's got something, there's something there. And we can maybe take that on and help develop it and bring it to market. Sometimes it's just, we will work with a designer that we really think they do great work, and there's an opportunity where we have a brief that we can present to them, and that has often worked quite well. What other ways?
I think it's also just some designers have more initiative, and if they send it through and we like it, we might run with it. But it's surprising how, I mean, we do receive a lot of submissions, but a lot of them we don't, and it comes down to a conversation you have with a designer at an event.
Yeah, like
No, actually, there's this thing, and you're like, oh, and I guess designers can be busy, and sometimes it's just by accident that you get talking with someone about something, and it leads to maybe not the design that you initially talked about, but another idea for something else. So I think
I think a lot of designers are actually quite conservative as well. I mean, in Australia, I think a lot of them don't submit things or put themselves forward. And so there's a bit of a waiting to be discovered or waiting to be approached kind of attitude. And there's nothing wrong with that, but your chances of that happening are quite low. And I think really being proactive and reaching out to those brands you'd like to work with is always, I always say, just reach out. You've got nothing to lose, and don't be too shy. I mean, people are just, in general, everyone seems to be quite time poor. So, putting your work in front of somebody is never going to be a bad thing.
I mean, I also personally think that with things like social media and stuff like that, they do have a opportunity to, build their own platform, to start talking about their work, to share their work, things like this. And I always encourage, I do a lot of sort of mentoring with young architects, and always encourage people to, really shout about their work, because like you say, no one's coming to find you, or the chances are quite small. So
yeah, and I think the thing is, there's a real saturation, because it is so much easier to promote yourself. There is just so much more there's just so much more content and things out there. And I think it's like, what else are you doing that everybody else is not doing? And it's,
reaching out
directly. It's amazing how few people take that little extra step.
Yeah, like general promotion online through social media as opposed to a direct email or like
Or just like a
old
message,
school.
via, I don't know, Instagram, just like, hey, this is my page.
Like a more personal
Yeah,
contact.
I'd really like to, if you would consider working with me, or I'm going to be at this show. If you were around, I would love to, meet you and have a chat. They're small things, but they do open
Cut
doors.
through.
With that in mind, I suppose, do you see a generational shift with the young designers coming through in terms of the skill set, the hunger, maybe the way they work, sort of thing, compared to how you were, particularly with your involvement in the education side?
I think they're way more polished in terms of skills and presentation. I think they're I think the universities are producing, I look at my portfolio and the way the renderings and the work that we produced compared to the work that current students are producing. And you can see the skill level has increased dramatically. And the tools have just gotten better and better. Where I think they're probably lacking in then is that there's been a real shift in those skills, but maybe in terms of the knowledge side of things, it's probably a little bit less so. Not everyone, these are big generalizations, but I think there's probably a shift more to the concept and the presentation than the kind of practical knowledge in some areas.
Do you think AI is playing much of a part in the sort of changing landscape of the industry? Obviously, it's much easier to come up with a very compelling visual without maybe the thought behind it, sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think one of the mistakes that I think designers make is outsourcing the concept. I think that's really, we've had this discussion before, and it's like, we don't want you to send us 30 iterations of an idea.
What's the good one?
Pick one. Pick a good one. Pick the one you really think is great and put that forward. I think there's this kind of like, it's just this volume, you can produce a lot more work these days. And it's like, you're not really focusing in on the concept and really refining it or honing it down as an idea. And I get that if they want to do that like behind closed doors and use those tools, because those tools are great and you can use those tools to explore ideas. But if you're
not curating it yourself,
you've got to curate it at some point. And when you're doing that, then pick the best idea and develop it further and really refine it and hone it. As opposed, because it's very clear what, if someone's done a whole AI thing and sent you lots of versions, and it's just not, it shows almost an outsourcing of the idea and the explorer and the thought. And, we're in the business of IP, really. And I think it's important that designers remember that that's what their value is the IP generation.
Yeah, I don't think we've gone ahead with an AI design yet. Not that we know of.
Not that we know of.
And are you as a business leaning into it from the sort of, the more behind the scenes functioning, doing the dishes type stuff?
Definitely. But it's very dry. It is like to do with the enterprise software that we use and operations and account codes and like just
coding
things that I do not want to sit there for a week dwelling about. That there's some really powerful things you can do to save yourself time on things that are quite complex that are not complex in AI.
Yeah, save time on admin, spend more time on design.
Yeah, that's the dream, right?
Yeah, that's all we all aim for.
In terms of the way things are changing, there's obviously also the sort of sustainability angle. That's obviously becoming so much more of a ongoing topic in design. And a lot of your work features heavily sort of recycled materials or, key use of materials. And again, with obviously things like furniture design, there's always that consideration of life cycle, repair, reuse, products coming to the end of its use. How has that sort of evolved over your sort of period of working? And also, What is that sort of focus like? Do you come to the table with that at the forefront now?
I think for us, we've always kind of, it was funny because it's like, for us, it's like ergonomics and safety. It's not like something you tack on the end. You really should be considering that from the beginning. And, I think we've always liked to play with new materials. I think materials has always been a really great R&D kind of aspect for us. And obviously sustainable materials are only going to become more and more important, but it does have to fit into the whole cycle of the product, the life cycle of the product. And, sometimes there's no point making something in a really like a post-consumer material if it's going to affect the longevity of the product to the point where there's no net benefit, or the serviceability and things like that. So you have to really take a much more holistic,
But the
approach.
material, like, is just one of those things that if you start with a good material, it flows through the whole life cycle anyway. If you get the material right.
Yeah.
But it's the big one, I guess, because it does affect everything.
Yeah.
Like how a product is sent, if it's sent flat or not, or if it's going to scratch, if it's going to be like weigh a lot. Like some sustainable products actually weigh quite a bit as well. But yeah, I think we both studied sustainability and taught sustainability at UTS actually. So it's always been inherent, and materials. Even when we graduated, we were, I think Material Connection was in New York, was like a gold mine. Always had that inherent. It's like a new ingredient as a chef. You're always searching for new ingredients and things like that. That I guess we don't just look for new materials, though. They're always sustainable new materials. There's always that lens, and we don't really second guess that, I guess.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, there's also the commercial aspect of it is, we want things that are going to be built to last, and the materials need to be tested and understood, as well. But I think we're on the cusp of a new age of material development and understanding. And I think there's always a cynical part of me where it's like, oh, it's recyclable. And it's like, great. And until you need to recycle it, and then it becomes,
and then it's a compounded product.
Yeah. So I think, it's definitely something we consider. We've always been a bit wary of treating it as a marketing tool, because I think a lot of people, especially now, you're starting to see it becoming more. I mean, there's a bit of greenwashing in the market, and there always has been, but I think, we're really, there's a lot of things that happen behind the scene that we don't promote or talk about, but it's just inherent in the design process. And, like you said, like design for disassembly and repairability and serviceability are some of the best things that you can do in product design. And they are sometimes very boring details in the design. They're not as visible, but they're really important for designers to consider, more and more so.
Do you think it has changed? Is there a different mindset to people, particularly your clientele, for example?
Yeah, there's definitely, I think it is, we're on a turning point.
Yeah, I have to say though, when we started out, I would have thought we'd be further along by now. Like I feel like it was kind of a hot discussion for a while, and I thought it was going to project more, but I feel like we're getting back to it, but it kind of just got lost a bit. I mean, we've always done it anyway, and it's not really a marketing tool, but like if I'm just like thinking about the industry as a whole, I'm kind of surprised sometimes how it feels like it's tacked on, at least in Australia, to be honest. Like, and this is terrible to say, but I feel like Europe is so far ahead with that stuff. And yeah, I mean, like, there's some companies that we work with that carbon count and do accounting across the whole board from the carbon perspective when we're looking into that. But we know it's not something brands are doing accurately in Australia, whereas a lot of companies in Europe are. So the carbon accounting really has a lot to catch up with, I think, in Australia. But
it has to be, I think all these things have to be legislated, and it has to be, there actually has to be an economic reasoning behind it for companies to embrace it. I think there's a lot of companies that are really trying in Australia as well, that are really trying to do great things around this area.
But they don't have the legislative
Yeah,
support.
and there also can be at a disadvantage as well in some ways. And so I think really now you're starting to see these large corporations really starting to mandate it, and I think I think we're on the cusp of a real change in the market and in our industry, and it's really encouraging. And there's some people who are really passionate about it and are really pushing it, and then like anything, they're the leaders, and then they create a path that others will follow. And once it gets that mass, it will become the standard
Yeah.
as well.
Do you feel like that in the UK, its sustainability has changed or evolved over time?
Mm,
I think probably just like you, everyone's tackling, everyone's tackling it. Everyone goes into the industry with that in their heart, wanting to, embrace it. And then obviously the commercial world comes about and like you say, unless it's legislated, a lot of clientele aren't necessarily interested in it. I mean, obviously, like you say, you do get those people that really want to push the boundary. And, in my experience, I've worked with lots of people that
mm,
even their own internal requirements, they're sort of mandated things in their own businesses, push for that themselves, and are pushing us as architects to
mm,
do those things. But then again, you work with different clients, and they want the bare minimum. So
mm.
I think there is also only so much you can do as a designer for hire, which maybe is different for you guys when you are designer, manufacturer,
Mm.
salespeople sort of thing. And
Mm.
yeah, I think it's a difficult conversation, and I do find it fascinating what you say about the sort of the reality is that the sensible choices in terms of weights of material, life cycle of material, long lasting materials actually maybe have a bigger impact on the whole sustainability argument than using a recycled plastic or something like that. But they are the unsexy side, aren't they? That's the thing. It's not necessarily as interesting for the newspapers because it's not the material on the forefront.
Yeah, hopefully you can do both, and that's where you're obviously going to maximize, the impact or the reduction of impact. I don't know. I've always been like, there's always like a carrot and stick approach to these things, and I think there hasn't been enough of either one. There's not the incentive for a lot of companies to lean that way.
In Australia, anyway.
Well,
I think in the EU,
I
there
think
seems to be a, I don't know.
yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm not
Maybe
100% with that, but like I think there needs to be a bit of both. And I think incentives for people to to be making better choices is always going to encourage people, and then obviously potential penalties as well. But that's there aren't many people in the world, there aren't many politicians I think who are willing to legislate or rock the boat too quickly or too much in some areas.
Sarah, I think, mentioned earlier about her love for floor plans, and obviously, as I mentioned, I'm an architect. How do you work with architects? How do you work with interior designers? And obviously, having an understanding or feeling for the spaces that your designs are going to be living in, and are there relationships between where other designers come in and have a sort of impact on what you do?
Yeah, we actually do surveys once a year as well to kind of, I mean, the name Design by Them is meant to kind of imply that we're kind of not in this kind of glass, in this box, pretending to really know what people want. And there's definitely a strong feedback loop with our customers that we really value. And I think hopefully as a brand, we feel approachable, and we do really listen to our customers, what they're looking for. We have a show called Show and Tell. And the premise of the show is actually like, we show you what we think, but you really tell us what you think. Like, it's really about them telling us rather than us showing them. And there's that feedback loop every year. And there's lots of things that we learnt last year in our show in Melbourne where they really did tell us some very insightful things. So we have that same approach in our team as well. We're very open with our design process, and you really need to test a new idea and intuitively see if it sticks very early on, because otherwise you're wasting your time. So we we constantly share a lot with the team and with our clients as well, just to kind of see what they think and see what they need. And then there's the color side of things. We try and we love color basically, and we want our clients to be able to use color. But you can imagine trying to commit containers of stock to certain colorways means you have to listen very, very carefully, not only to what they say, but what the data tells you. I would say we are big lovers of data. We don't make any assumptions. We like to see and what people love through what's been selling, because that ultimately is the true test of whether you have picked the right colors or the right product, and what is it and why do they like the certain products, and what not only what is missing, but what are we doing well, and how can we service our clients better through good product.
And we're in a unique position where we have our standard colors, which we hope works for most of our clients, but we are in a unique position where we do custom colors, and it is interesting because we look at that data and see, okay, what are people asking for that we're not providing? And we can then look at that and feed it back into our design team and really consider where the market's going. I mean, we're really lucky here in Australia because the interior scene is really, well, I think the interiors and architecture here is actually really world class, especially in a workplace perspective and hospitality, which are two of the big areas that we work in. And, it's like chicken and egg, it's like we are informed by their work. Our work can also influence their work when it's seen in their environments. And so it's this really great feedback loop that we have. And, there's plenty of projects that we look at and are really inspired by. And it may not, if a lot, we consume a lot of this information, and it's always interesting to observe how our clients are evolving as well. And I think we're in a very enviable position when it comes to being in Australia, when it comes to the work that's being produced here by interior designers and architects.
We should look at more floor plans though.
Yeah, we probably should look at more floor in our spare time.
It's never a bad thing.
Scale is important too, like especially when you look on a floor plan. But yeah.
In terms of how the products are sourced, is it in the sense that obviously you mentioned doing commercial interiors, doing hospitality interiors? Is it that your pieces are used singly, or is it? I mean, I know you produce a lot of sort of modular pieces as well. Did the designers sort of approach it from a holistic point of view where you have a number of pieces in a space, or is it the sort of one-off type aspect?
It's definitely
Depends on the project.
Yeah, but as we've grown, we obviously are able to provide more for a project in terms of the categories that they may require. So it really has changed. We are definitely able to supply more into it.
In saying that, I actually really love when our products are mixed in with other people's products. I probably shouldn't say that, but I think it's actually like the other day a project came up and I was so happy. It was someone's house, and I looked at this house and went, oh, look at all those Australian brands in there that they've chosen, and probably have a story behind them. And I mean, it's not even that they're Australian design brands, but it's good if products are eclectic as well in a space, and that they work together with other people's products, because you don't want to design a look or like, I don't know. I think it's there are definitely those projects where we respect a lot, but it's also nice when you see other people doing well out of the same project, I think.
Obviously, we speak about Australian design a lot in the sort of conversations. Does the sort of Australian craft idea or manufacture come into it?
The thing I associate with Australian craft, which is terrible to say, is limitation. Because if we just made things in Australia with what was available in Australia, it's hard. It's really hard, and you kind of limited. The manufacturing industry in Australia is very good, but it's very specialized. It's a craft, right? And I guess we and there's designers that work very well in that area, but we love, like I said, a new ingredient and a challenge of a new material, a new manufacturing method. So I guess there's still craft in that, but I do see a lot of Australian designers limit themselves to that, and I think like it's quite fun to use different materials and parameters. I guess it's like architecture, being able to think about a new way of using a new material for a facade or things like that. It's like you kind of want designers to have that opportunity as well to explore materials and things. And sometimes, not always, in Australia, that can be quite limiting. In saying that, like earlier on, that limitation really forced us into some really unique pieces.
Yeah.
The butter range would not be its shape and form if we hadn't been limited to the road sign material that was available to us at the time. And there's, limitations can create really unique outcomes, but they can also limit you. So
I think for us, there was a decision that we had to come to, which was there's definitely brands that are very successful with manufacturing in Australia, and it in a way can shape your model. And I think for Sarah and I, we came to this point where we're like, our thing was always we wanted to be able to just not be limited by any kind of manufacturing. In that we wanted to be able to do it wherever we wanted, and to get the design outcome for us was the key priority. And so that was a decision we had to make. And also for us, we have ambitions to be a global brand, and there's just these practical aspects to it, like around supply chain and shipping and things like that. And so with us, we were more kind of looking at, well, we want to be making in the areas and the factories that our competitors, the global competitors that we are benchmarking, are producing. And that was a key decision we had to make. I think if there is a definite, and for us as well, the accessibility of our products in terms of price, is also a consideration for us. We don't want to only sell things that are over $1,000, for example. And so, we approached it from the accessibility and availability side as well. And I think our priority has always been design. We want to, our focus is on design and the designers. And one of the things that I've always disliked about furniture design, for a long time, it was seen as a bit of a second job. It's like you make your money doing X job and then you design furniture. And for us, we want furniture designers, for them to be a career, or a product designer to be a career and not a hobby. And so if we can, pay them as maximum royalty as possible, because we're not limited to manufacturing in one location, I think that's our end goal.
Yeah, there's an interesting story behind that. We used to produce a letterbox, and we were making it in Australia, and actually another company came and made the same thing but overseas, and took away our market and took away the royalty to the designer. And we went, oh my gosh, so we kind of made a decision to support Australia, or designers in general first, manufacturing second. And we always manufacture where the best manufacturing is. I mean, we manufacture in Japan, Italy, China, Australia, all over the world. But the main priority is that it's designed
so we can bring the best product to market.
Yeah, so that we can pay royalties to designers. If it's a non-viable product, it's not going to do anything for the designer. So it's an interesting.
It's a concept.
Yeah.
No, it makes a lot of sense. There's a great great quote on your website that says, "Through our products, talks, and events, we hope to educate the general public and wider design community about the importance of product design." How much? I mean, that's a really kind of compelling piece about the sort of education and accessibility point, and particularly when you're thinking about the general public, for example. How do you feel like you do that, and what's the sort of ambition behind talking about design to people that aren't designers, I guess?
Well, I think one of the funny things is people, I have friends who aren't in the design industry, and it's always interesting because I'd be like, I will talk about the designer of the product, and to us that seems normal, but
Mm.
to a lot of people, the idea that a person is associated with a product is there's a bit of a disconnect there. They don't actually realize that, sometimes they don't realize like, oh, if you buy a copy, you're actually taking money away from a person. It's not just a
Mm.
company. There's a royalty that's being taken away. Original design is actually a career. There's a purpose. Someone's committed it. It's a craft in itself. And I think it's interesting because it's a fundamental mind shift for some people in that way. And it's really interesting. It's like people just think that product, like companies make it, and then, so putting the designer in the forefront is always obviously it humanizes the product, and I think it makes it much more valuable to people, and design
Mm.
becomes more valuable in some ways. And I think that's one part of it. I think being transparent, or as trying to be as transparent as possible and getting feedback is also another thing, because I think design has often teetered on the edge of being a little bit elitist. And so it comes back to that accessibility, making people feel comfortable with design, feeling they can walk in somewhere and not feel intimidated. And that, I think that's also a big part of it as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, it's an interesting thought. It's like, part of me is just like, okay, what can we do more of?
Yeah.
To be honest, I'm like, how can we educate people further?
Well, for example,
Materiality, I think, is important, and people understanding sustainability and materiality is something we talk about a lot on the website and through our email. But I mean, and then we have people that come into the showroom and they often know the story behind the product, which is always lovely as well.
Mm.
But I'm sure we could do more.
For
I'm
example,
kind of intrigued now what you think.
yeah, for example, when we do our talks, the idea of the talks isn't that it's just industry. We want hopefully someone who's a general public punter who's not in the design industry to come along and maybe get some inspiration or insight into the industry itself. I think design has always been a little bit on the, like, in itself, a bubble.
Mm.
And, we market as much as we can to the general public, but I don't think there's lots of areas that could be improved, and we have a lot of work still to do in that area.
My wife always gets pissed off with me because I use her as an example all the time, but my wife is a normal person, not an architect. So we we always have these conversations about the things that she feels or understands about a space, and the things that I see or notice or things like that. And I always just find it a very interesting angle. And like you say, people with that sort of design mindset can have an appreciation of the design of a product, of a building, of a system. Sort of that's kind of an inherent thing that you see, and you do kind of consider the person, the brain behind the idea.
Mm.
And I think it is that interesting thing of like, do people actually consider the value of the thing? Do they see it as a commodity that they just, I'm sitting on this chair and I just happen to sit on this chair and I don't consider anything else, or the thought process behind it? I think it's just a kind of fascinating piece, and like you say, so much of it comes through education and transparency, because the more we hear about the stories behind those things, the more appreciation you have. When you learn about the nuances, the intricacies, the little moments, or like you say, the sustainability things that something's doing, I guess the more appreciation you have for it.
Yeah, and value. The more value you put on it, hopefully you'll look after it and keep it and not throw it away.
But it's like one of those things, you shouldn't have to explain a product to someone for them
Well,
to.
yeah, that's the other angle, isn't it?
But like, actually, the best way you can get good design out and educate people is through a product that pleasantly just they love and enjoy using every day. So they might, you want to get the product out there. It might be in a restaurant, or they might commit to it in their home. That, oh my gosh, I just love this product so much. So it might be, it's just like, yeah, it's this kind of
But you can do both.
yeah,
You can do both.
yeah, it's tricky because people just don't think like that, but you kind of hope it sneaks up on them, and then they go, oh, I actually really do love this design.
And it works on levels as well. You know, you have your product level, your brand level as well. And, you know, people understanding a product or a brand and what that brand stands for and what the products that come out of that brand or firm in terms of an architectural practice or interior firm. But it's funny, like it makes me laugh because, you know, I'll go to a new restaurant, say with some friends, and I'm sitting there and I'm like touching under the tables and looking at all the fixtures. And, you know, my experience of that is completely different to say the way they all experience that space. You know, I'm there analyzing and looking and everything. And they're just like, oh, I love this space. It just feels great. And obviously the designer of that space has done a really great job.
I feel like in architecture, you probably get that. That happens more often. Like they might be in a space and not really know much about architecture. And then they step into this building, they're like blown away.
Yeah.
And architecture has that ability to kind of get people curious about it. Furniture is a bit harder again, because normally it's the space itself they're consumed by. And by the time they get to the product, you got to hope that they are still interested or intrigued by it. But they do come across things in public spaces, at least furniture and things that might gain that curiosity.
I think when they worked well, I think when they work together though, it's always, you know, like I've definitely seen some beautiful spaces with some terrible furniture in it, and it's really taken it away. And you can put really beautiful furniture in a terrible space, and it can also be not a great outcome. So I don't know. I think there is, you know, you've nailed it. You know, I think there's, especially with architecture and interiors, when people just walk in and
go, wow, and they're not sure why.
And they don't even know.
I think, like you say, though, with you guys, for example, you know, the people making the choices are buying into your ethos, you know, what you do and the strength of, you know, what you stand for. I suppose that's a decision in itself. And, you know, the designers are saying we want to go along a certain path. It's not just about, you know, I like that chair. It's that whole thought process and, you know, about what and why you do it, I guess.
And I think hopefully all these things translate into the product, you know, in a subconscious way, or, you know, and that's where valuing design is really important, because I think for Sarah and I think the products are a representation of us and the brand and everything we do, and so they really are like a physical manifestation of what we believe in.
Wow.
I should remember that. I'm going to remember and write that.
Yeah, write that one down.
Yeah.
With that in mind, I saw a wonderful YouTube video about your office studio space, designed by Smart Design Studio.
Yeah.
A really beautiful space in an industrial existing building. How does that sort of benefit the way you work, the way you show your products, the way the light catches them, sort of thing? Like, how does that space influence what you do?
I think it definitely brings our team together, and to see the products in this beautiful building is really special. And I know the team is very proud to work in this space that's been well designed. And
I mean, I feel so privileged to walk in here every day and work.
yeah,
like it really is. It's an amazing space. And if we are passionate about design, I think we need to be in a space.
Right, it influences your feeling. It's like, it's similar to getting dressed in the morning if you work at home. Sometimes just getting dressed for yourself puts you in a different mindset, and I think a building can do that as well.
And also, I mean, William and his team are so accomplished that it is actually quite inspiring to be in one of their projects.
And presumably the people coming in to see your pieces, for example, that has an impact in terms of their setting, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it the experience starts from the outside of the building. I think when they look at it, they know that what the people in here are probably quite serious about design, and passionate about it, and I think that matters.
It's also a really light filled space, which is nice for a showroom. A lot of showrooms are very like stage lit, but it's very airy and casual. It's like quite a casual space in a way, like for a showroom. It's industrial and airy as opposed to like opulent and showcased, I guess. Yeah. It also means it's just a nice space to work in because there's a lot of natural light, which helps. Yeah.
Having spent an hour reflecting on your lives and careers, what do you think people can take away from your journey? Having started your own company with a clear, sort of ethos in mind, and gone out and probably done things a little bit differently than maybe your peers, for example. Has it turned out how you imagined? And I suppose what can other people see or take from it?
This has turned out nothing like I had imagined. And that's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. I think we've...
I just think of our first projections.
Yeah. I think we went in
Very...
I love looking back at our old like plans, and like I found them. But I think one thing I will say is that it's been incredibly rewarding, and I wouldn't have changed it. Now, would I start something similar today, knowing what I know, knowing all the challenges and everything? I would probably sit down and think about it more than an instant yes. But I have to say, I do feel really privileged to do what I do. And it's been really enjoyable, but also quite challenging. And I think we like challenges. And so, but yeah, I think it's nothing like I had actually anticipated when we first started. And we've evolved a lot as well.
Yeah, I think, it is like very different to what we thought. But at the same time, we're probably arriving at the same idea that we had from it's not like, the end goal has always been the same. So it's just taken a bit longer than we thought. But I think that, because we're so passionate about what we do, it's helped the longevity of the business. We've had the stamina to keep going. So I guess if someone was wanting to do a business idea, I think as long as you've got the passion, because otherwise you won't want to keep doing it. You've got to love your work. You've got to be like, it should be so exciting that you don't want to really do anything else, especially at the start when you start your business.
Yeah, and like I think we're very lucky. I mean, I was saying to someone only recently, there hasn't really been a day where I haven't wanted to come into work, which is crazy to think. Like I was like, that is actually a wild thing to have, and it's very lucky to be able to say that. That's not to say that there's definitely some hard days, but I think I don't know. There's just sometimes I can't believe it's my job. Like this is what I do. Like I say to Sarah, we design furniture. Yes, we run a business and there's all that other side, which probably takes up most of our time, but it's a pretty crazy...
It's a privilege.
Yeah, it's a pretty niche thing to do. And so to make a living off it and to support a growing team and be ambitious and really have a lot of fun doing it as well, we're pretty fortunate.
Sounds wonderful.
I had hair when we started. I mean, that's all you... If you're listening to this podcast, go to the YouTube video and look at me, and you'll see what 18 years of design can do to a person.
And on that note, we'll leave it there. Sarah, Nick, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
See ya.